You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I'm Subi. Alongside me is Taylor Dammel. We're brought to you by Dash Radio and the Barn Burner Podcast Network. Go subscribe on whichever device you use. I actually heard Taylor King, former Duke forward by way of Huntington Beach, Matter Day, shares the same name as you, but he's subscribed, so you should as well. Check out the website at thebarnburner.com. That's the-barnburner.com. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at CBB Theater. You should also follow me at Subi232 to find out where the theat is. And make sure to follow Taylor at Taylor Dammel. Let's open the curtains. All right. So Dennis Solari, I heard, I was watching TV the past couple days, obviously, and I know which commercial you're talking about. And you're right. I have seen it. I'm familiar with it. But that's about the extent that I'm willing to go, because after it, I was saying to myself, well, he's not, I don't know his name. It's not a household name to me. Like, this isn't Jake from State Farm. If someone said, oh, Jake from State Farm, I'd say, oh, khakis, something like that. Dennis Solari, I know what commercial you're referencing. I know it's for AT&T, but I can't really identify with the character. But the craziest thing is I feel like I'm completely out of the loop, because when we were recording on Monday, Rachel was in the other room and she was like, I wanted to scream at you. You know who Dennis Solari is. Is it Solari or celery? Like, I don't.
It's Solari. That's the joke. That's the joke. Or it's part of the joke, I guess.
That's no, I don't like him. I feel like I'm now 1v3. But when I was watching it, I was like, yes, I know what this commercial is, but I couldn't identify Dennis Solari. Does that make sense at all?
I mean, yeah, I wasn't the one who brought it up, first off. Let me just point that out. Okay, so the comp was made by the Shark, who, as per usual, isn't here to actually have the discussion about something that he brought up in the first place. Now, do we give the Shark a pass for not being here in this episode because he's boots on the ground at a game? This evening? Yeah, I'll give him a very good game at that. So Seton Hall, Georgetown. Yeah, and those are his boys. Well, one of his. How many lists? What's his list of boys? We'll have to ask him that, because how many? He's got to be up to 4 or 5 teams and boys, if not more. 6, 7.
I think he had an official number at some point, but Georgetown's not his boys. McClung is his boy, and he's not. Well,
but Seton Hall is his boys, though.
Absolutely, I would say that they are the clubhouse leader of Sharks boys.
Yes, exactly. But I was just not arguing with you, but giving you a hard time that you didn't know who Dennis Solari was. I'm not exactly sure how the Greg Gard, Dennis Solari. I mean, I guess,
they just both have fat faces.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe a similar hairstyle, but I'm glad you at least are back in the loop on that comp, or at least knowing who that person is, so we can move forward with our lives now.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to confirm that as well. But again, doesn't stand out to me. And I know you're bearing the brunt of my rant right now, but I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to me and hear me out, because I still feel like I'm taking crazy pills with at least Shark and Rachel saying that you should know who Dennis Solari is. No, Dennis Solari is not on the level of a Jake from State Farm in terms of notoriety and household names, is what I'd say.
I mean, Rachel did know who he was, though, so
she's wrong too.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. We're all. Wait. The only problem was that you had pretty much come off the discussion of we've done nothing. We've had no social interaction with anybody for a month, and all I've done is watch TV, and this commercial's on every third commercial at this point.
That's true. Well, it's mindless, though. I try and tune it out when the commercials are on. Maybe get some foot fires going during commercial time.
Oh, foot fires. I haven't seen you do that in a while. We really need those for rallies. Maybe that's why, Arizona basketball performed a lot better when we lived together, I feel like, because we could do rally fireball shots. We could do foot fires during halftime to get the team going. And now we're, not together. And maybe that's maybe we were the secret to Arizona basketball success. The foot fires specifically from you.
Whole athletic program has gone downhill. We're posting 3-8 seasons with Kevin Sumlin in football. But I think the last foot fires I did actually were before the Pac-12 title game for football, Arizona versus Oregon, where they got absolutely smoked by Oregon. But Oregon also was the runner-up in college football for that year, so I'm not terribly. Maybe I should bring the foot fires back out before each game, after each game. They got 2 opportunities against the LA schools at home to make it 4 wins in a row. So they should win UCLA on Saturday. Thursday is going to be a difficult game.
Yeah. And we'll get into that's one of the many kind of rivalry games that actually we have coming up on Saturday. So I would say that, with football obviously ending this last weekend, and we just kind of talked about this the last couple episodes, but real strong Saturday of college basketball coming up. And so this is kind of like the, hey, everybody, this has been going on for a little bit. Why don't you come join us now type of weekend?
Dress rehearsal time is over. The curtains are up, as I had mentioned at the break of at the end of each of my intros. But seriously, college basketball curtain is now up. It's time to show everyone that's been casual or hasn't even been paying attention to college basketball what's happening this year. And so before we even dive into some of those Saturday games, another huge piece of news, our boy John Rothstein is going to get his own show on YouTube coming next week, and it's called Stuffed. So the trailer, based on the trailer, it's just him talking to coaches, maybe for his own podcast, maybe just for enjoyment. Maybe he texted the coaches, just said, hey, give me a call. Coaches probably are like, we don't hear the coaches on the other end of the line. They're probably like, John, why the fuck are you calling me? But the trailer is just him talking to coaches, eating what looks like to be an absolute buffet of different food from onion rings to sushi. He even ate some onion rings with chopsticks. I mean, this seems like it's right up my alley, food and college basketball, and it's Rothstein in a dark theater. Another one of the things up our alley, theater. Have you been able to see the trailer?
I did. The thing that I wonder about with Rothstein is more than anything else is like, when does this guy sleep? Because he's
May.
Yeah. Shit. That's on me. I'm going to go ahead. I'll go do some foot fires after this show. I'll go take a lap. But in all seriousness, it's like he is eating everything. He's watching every single college basketball game, seemingly. And now he has time to do this, too. It's incredible. He's incredible.
I want to know what his thoughts are like on ethnic food. Because I feel like, and I had mentioned sushi. I don't know if he actually is eating sushi, but I feel like Rothstein in that trailer and every time he tweets is always tweeting about like Italian food or New American, a steak, wings, pasta. True. I want to know his thoughts on maybe a Cambodian joint in New York City, or what are his thoughts on like Ethiopian?
Well, can you maybe just tweet at him and ask him that?
I've tweeted at him so many times, man. I feel like he is annoyed by my tweeting. I'm going to tweet at him again, though. That won't deter me.
No, of course not. Him and Pantelis, we can't get him to respond at all, and we have actual legitimate questions that we need to know. The listeners want to know just as bad as we are, I assume.
I would like to also see with this new show of his, do you think, Taylor, there's any opportunity for a collaboration between Rothstein and Guy Fieri?
I saw you tweet about that, and I feel like they both have the same amount of energy. So really, they should be able to find this in their schedule because neither of them probably sleep at all. Guy Fieri probably has a lot of issues, obviously, with being the mayor of Flavortown. I'm sure that there's got to be probably another campaign coming up. Election season's coming up, so I'm sure he's got to get out and talk to his people about that to continue his run as mayor of Flavortown. But other than that, they don't sleep at all, so they really have 24 hours of opportunity to have some kind of collaboration. Maybe as Guy Fieri, what's his breakfast food situation? What does Rothstein think about breakfast food? Maybe we could get one of those mashups where they could film it at 5 a.m. because they're both probably up taking care of their duties by then. Yeah,
I agree with that. But I would say that their breakfast food, both of them, they probably just eat wings. I mean, I feel like Fieri just loves wings dunked in buffalo sauce or mild Daytona, whatever it is. And then I feel like Rothstein, he only eats those Kerry style wings at Bar Coastal. But I mean, I want those two to get and collaborate together because they're just two of the more absurd human beings, not only in real life, but also on Twitter. Both are must follows in my opinion. And so Rothstein, hug for you. New show coming to YouTube starting next week. I will be watching. That's going to be must see television.
Can I push that one farther? If they're going to do a show about wings, can we get Rick Ross in there?
Yeah.
Wings.
Maybe do that wing challenge.
Lemon pepper my wings. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways that Rothstein can go with this. He's got the connections. I'm looking forward to everything that he does with this new platform. Actually, shout out to Rothstein. He's made a lot of social media growth in the last 12 months. He used to just be a Twitter guy.
Rothstein used to be one of those, if you were like a hipster college basketball fan or a college basketball fan like us who has the finger on the pulse of almost every team or analyst. Like he used to be in the Steve Lapis type analyst, right?
Right.
He was always just a CBS Sports Network guy. Now everyone knows John Rothstein as the insane human being on Twitter that tweets the exact same one-liners about different coaches, about different venues, about different foods, and he also gives you those inspirational tweets every single morning.
Right. Yeah. No, it's beautiful to see someone who's at the top of their craft, but continuing to grow as a person to push themselves even further up towards the top of their industry. Let's call it.
Can we liken John Rothstein to Gonzaga's ascension over the past 2 decades? Right. So Gonzaga was that mid-major team that no one really knew about, early 2000s. Mark Few comes in and they start to build success. Now nobody really even considers them a mid-major anymore. That's kind of how I see Rothstein, right? He's a major player in college basketball media.
Oh, 100%. He is. Yeah, and he always shows up. He's one of the guys that if you're not a major college basketball fan, he always shows up in March, and you're like, oh yeah, we know him. Same with Gonzaga. Who watches Gonzaga basketball games during the year? No one. No one watches Gonzaga basketball games. They got to be like the least highly rated TV games of like all time for a school that hasn't left the top 5 in like 15 years. And yet, like if you ask our parents or something or some, oh yeah, Gonzaga, they're good, right? So like Rothstein. Oh yeah, Rothstein's here in March every year. I know him.
No, it's a very good point because I don't really watch Rothstein on CBS Sports Network because I feel like they always air their programs at 11:30 my time after a San Diego State or West Coast Conference.
Which just happens to be when Gonzaga is playing as well.
Exactly.
The
similarities are there.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I think you got it spot on.
I'll be checking out that show. I suggest you do as well. I would also suggest checking out the slate of games upcoming this Saturday, highlighted by Duke, North Carolina. So what I want to do, Taylor, is first, why don't you run down the list of these rivalry games / good games that are going to be on Saturday, and then we'll spend the rest of the time discussing Duke, Carolina, because at the end of the day, there's a lot better games in terms of what I'm predicting to be more competitive than Duke, Carolina. But Duke, Carolina always highlights this college basketball Saturday, and it goes to my point for me saying that's the greatest rivalry in all of sports, professional, collegiately. It's better than Ohio State, Michigan. It's better than Red Sox, Yankees. It's better than Bears, Packers, in my opinion. This is the premier rivalry in sports because you have a team like Carolina who's 10-12, and it's still going to draw attention to this game.
Oh yeah, no. If it wasn't Duke, North Carolina, it would be. I just ran through the list again. It would probably be the worst game of that we're going to run through. If it wasn't Duke, North Carolina, obviously that means a lot. And one of the games that's happening on Saturday night, the last big game of the day, is Oregon State. Oregon State has a much better combined record than Duke, North Carolina, even in like conference play. And so outside of the the legendary game that it is, it's not exactly as big of a draw this year, but this is kind of the, I guess, North Carolina isn't going to make the tournament, right? Unless they win the conference tournament. And we don't think that they're going to win the conference tournament either because they suck. But if they could like knock off a game like this, it might give them a little confidence to maybe end the season on a high and maybe make that type of run in the ACC tournament. I don't know. Remains to be seen. I think it's just going to be a blowout personally, but we'll get into it in a second. Some of the other games that we're looking at, actually Friday, the theater starts on Friday. This is kind of a Shark versus Subramanian game, if there is one. And that's Maryland at the Underwoods. That's Friday night.
That's a huge Shark Subramanian
That's
game.
a big Shark Subramanian game right there.
Yeah.
Right.
I was ready to two-step yesterday when Rutgers was up by 7 or so, end of the first half, and Maryland they did not score a point. Forget a field goal. I don't think Maryland scored a point for the last 9 minutes of the first half. They ended up coming back and battling and winning. But again, I still didn't. Outside of Jalen, what's his name? Jalen something. Their guy in Maryland.
Oh, well, right. I mean, there's Anthony Cowan. He missed
Cowan, but right. He's not. I don't even think he's their best player right now. It's Jalen. I'm blanking on the name, but
it starts with a C. Wow, luckily we're college basketball.
Jesus Christ.
Well,
now we got to look it up.
Running a college basketball podcast. Jalen Smith.
Is it Jalen Smith?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he's averaging 15 points a game.
Incredible name to completely blank out on. But
well, that's the problem. Is it's like the most common name in college basketball.
Yeah, I was going to two-step on the Shark yesterday, but Maryland did end up coming back and beating Rutgers. But yes, Maryland, Illinois, huge game. I'm very confident in the Illini. Friday night in Champaign. Maryland can't win on the road. Give me the Underwoods.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And whoever wins that game, obviously that's not for a couple days, but whoever wins that game is going to be in first place by themselves in the Big Ten. And that's pretty big because, Maryland, some people would have predicted that, but I don't think even you would have predicted that. You predicted Underwood as coach of the year, but I don't think any of us would have predicted it would be because they were leading the conference with 6 or 7 games left in the season, or however many it is now, 8 games left in the season. So it's pretty incredible on Illinois' part. And, one of the other games that's going to have a lot to do with where those teams fall in the Big Ten standings is Michigan State at Michigan. Now, we've talked about previously how Michigan hasn't played nearly as well as they did earlier in the season. Michigan State kind of going through a little bit of rough patch now. Obviously I think you guys are a little higher on them than I am at this point. That game really is, if Michigan can win that game, then they are back in. All right, they're in the tournament. If Michigan loses that game, they're probably back out at that point because they fall to 4-8 in the Big Ten, which would be good enough for something like 10th place or 9th place. So that's a kind of a big one. If Michigan State loses that game, they fall to 8-5. That puts them 2 games back in conference with about 7 or 8 games to go, and that'll be their 3rd loss in a row. Obviously, that's not where they expected to be at this point this year. Although we know that ISO teams usually don't peak, but it's going to be tough to continue to convince yourself that they're going to peak if they lose like 3 in a row and we're 10 days into February. That means March is only 18 days away after that. So that one's pretty big to me. Looking forward to talking to Mike Burgomaster about LSU Auburn, which is also one of the early games on Saturday. A couple other ones we have are Seton Hall at Nova. Another huge one. We'll have to see how that Seton Hall game turns out tonight, too, to see kind of the implications on that game. We've got St. Louis Dayton, real underrated rivalry, especially with how good Dayton is this year. And then some of the other ones, we've got Virginia Louisville, Gonzaga St. Mary's, UCLA Arizona, Oregon State, and then not quite a rivalry game, but on Sunday we have Butler Marquette as well. A real litmus test for Butler in that one too, because I think they're very overrated.
Speaking of Butler, and I'm going to intertwine this back with 2 points related to those slated games that you just mentioned. A couple weeks ago, I said Butler and Auburn had huge road wins against conference teams to avoid going into a complete tailspin. There were about 2 weeks, and this is extended a little bit now here for Butler, more so than Auburn, absolutely, because Auburn's rattled off 2 straight, starting with Kentucky. But Butler kind of went through that 2-week stretch. So did Auburn, of disappointing play, but they rallied in tough environments to win basketball games to avoid going into a complete tailspin. Michigan now, as it relates to these games, Michigan is in a complete tailspin. That is where they're at right now. And I'm glad you brought up, you made a great point about whether they win, they're probably back in. If they lose, they're probably back out. The way I look at it is this is the very first game for a major conference team that is a must win in the regular season. I genuinely believe that beating Michigan State is a must win for Michigan because the Big Ten is very difficult. We all understand that. Michigan's schedule doesn't get any easier, and it's not as if Michigan is a powerhouse team. It's not like they're playing anywhere near the level that they were in November and December. So this game against Sparty is a must-win game.
Well, I'm actually going to push back on you a little bit. Their schedule from here, they've actually kind of played a tougher half of the season so far. Their only ranked team they have left to play is at Maryland. The rest at the end of the season, Michigan does. Their next games after this are Northwestern, Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue, Wisconsin. They get to play Nebraska again. They could probably, if they win this game, I could see them getting back to 500 in conference play, which would make them to the tournament. Now, on the flip side,
quick, I would say 4 of those teams are not guaranteed, with Purdue being a bit of a stretch. So very surely, in my opinion, 3, Rutgers, Indiana, and Wisconsin. Those 3 teams, I don't have any confidence that Michigan can beat those 3. And yeah, Rutgers isn't ranked, but they were hovering 20 through 25 for a majority of the season.
Sure, but I would say if they could beat a team like Michigan State, it would give me the more of a good feeling that they could knock off some of those 50-50 games. Now, here's the only problem we have with Michigan State in terms of if they're going to win the Big Ten. They're flipped. They've already played the easy half of their schedule. They still play Illinois, Maryland, Iowa, Maryland, Penn State, all ranked teams coming down the stretch. 2 days ago, we would have said, Penn State, no big deal. They just lost to Penn State at home last night. So that kind of already brings up so you only got 2 gimmies in there, and that's at Nebraska. And then even the end of the year is Ohio State, which we don't know how Ohio State's going to be this year or, end this season. But, they're a decent enough team. If you're saying that they really only have, if we look at the last 7 games, there aren't any gimmies in there for Michigan State. And, again, 2 weeks ago, we would have said, they'll probably roll off, 6 of those, no problem, win the conference with 3-4 losses. But now you're already at, 3-4 losses. And you still have to play 5-6 ranked opponents, half of those being on the road. That's a tough sled to pull there, even at Michigan, even for Michigan State, in my opinion. So it's going to be, that's what makes this game on Friday so big. Illinois or Maryland will essentially have a 2-game lead on Michigan State, and Michigan State still has 5 ranked teams to play.
Yeah, no, that's very true. There was another game that you had mentioned that I just wanted to touch briefly upon. I think you had said Auburn LSU, which is going to be a huge tilt because LSU right now sitting alone in first place in the SEC. Meanwhile, Auburn only has 2 losses coming off of a Final Four campaign. Both of these teams lost a ton of talent from their very good seasons last year and their teams last year. Okeke gone for Auburn just off the top of the head. And then for LSU, Naz Reid gone for them as well. Trey Waters gone. So Will Wade and Bruce Pearl, and I had mentioned Bruce Pearl as my SEC Coach of the Year. I think actually that's sitting pretty. That's going to be a game to watch in the SEC for sure.
Oh, I mean, they'll be 3 games up on Auburn if LSU wins. And depending on what Kentucky does, they'll be 2 games up on Kentucky. And they only play Kentucky once. So Kentucky would only have the opportunity to get 1 game back on LSU. So I really don't see how anyone else would win the SEC at this point. If LSU essentially goes 3 games up with 8 or 9 games to play at that point, and only if they had to play Kentucky twice in there, I'd say, okay, if Kentucky sweeps them, they get both games a tiebreaker, the whole deal, then you'd say, okay, yeah, there's still a race. It's going to be real tough for anyone to get over LSU if they're undefeated 9 games in and they 3 games up and have the tiebreaker over theoretically the second best team in the conference.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but college basketball teams, especially this year, are so fickle. I could see LSU out of nowhere losing 2 or 3 straight.
Sure.
They don't necessarily strike me as a powerhouse team that's going to win a ton of games in a row, even though they're well on their way to doing that at the moment. We're in the midst of that, but I could definitely. February is a very long month, and I'm very curious to see who's going to be playing well towards that last week of February. That's when the money is going to be made.
Well, it's interesting you say that.
I didn't mean to say that about LSU, by the way. Sorry, Will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. LSU could also, they're 2 buckets away in like each game to also being like 2-6 in conference. Yeah, they really are. All their wins are by like 4 points, 2 points. Florida missed a layup that was called, or they made a layup that was called back at the buzzer by like 0.1 second to beat them earlier this year. But, it really depends on how you fall on the argument. And I just bring up Arizona, right? Arizona's lost to those games that they needed 4 buckets or 2 buckets. LSU has 1 game where they needed 2 buckets. So do you fall on this team is close to losing these games, or they're tough because they've pulled out all of those games? I'm not asking you specifically. I'm just saying there's 2 schools of thought to that. You could easily make the argument that, they are just outlasting everybody, maybe not due to their own accord, just because of coin flip type of things. But I will say, just because of where they'll end up if they win this game, 3 games up, it's tough. It would be tough to lose all those coin flips in reverse going the other way.
They'd have to beat themselves, but regardless, a bevy of games all on Saturday across all conferences and this weekend. But like we said, it's headlined by Carolina Duke. No matter how shitty Carolina is, or even no matter how shitty Duke is, which I can't remember the last time Duke was truly this as bad as Carolina is this year, or sub 500. This is the best rivalry in sports. And you had mentioned you think that it's going to be a blowout. I was fighting with myself with this one. I didn't know if it was going to be a blowout in favor of Duke or it's going to be a competitive, close game. I think Duke wins regardless. Duke's going to either win in a rout or in a close game. I don't think Carolina wins whatsoever. But I think with Cole Anthony being back, and I think with this game being played in Chapel Hill, and it's a rivalry game, fans are going to show out. Game day is going to be there. I think game day is going to be there, right? I have to fucking assume so. It's Duke, Carolina.
It's generally a safe assumption. Yeah.
Right. But I think this is actually going to be a closer game than a lot of people expect. I think it's going to come down to within 1 or 2 possessions, under 3 minutes, but Duke will eventually win. It's not as if Duke's been playing that well past couple games either. They had a good stretches against Syracuse for sure, which is, a hostile environment to play in. Absolutely. Then they just were terrible against BC, ended up winning that game. But the past 2 games have been a little shaky, and going into a rivalry game, it's completely different. It's going to sound so cliche, but really you do have to throw out the records when these 2 teams play each other, especially with Cole Anthony actually playing. So I'm actually going to take Duke in a close one.
Yeah, well, you generally don't have to throw out the records because both teams are usually really good. Like last year, they played each other when they were the number 2 and number 3 teams in the country. This graphic comes out, or this stat comes out every year when these teams play, but it's always funny to look at it again. The last 100 matchups between Duke and North Carolina are 50-50.
That's insane.
With the same exact amount of points scored, 7,746 for both teams. So yeah, it's crazy. And over the last 100 matchups, that goes way back more than just what the players on this team or whatever. So yeah, you can throw the records out and say that, yeah, they're always good, generally going to be close. Here's something I want to bring up to you, though, just get your thoughts on. We're big Nwora boys from Louisville, but is Vernon Carey the player of the year in the ACC?
He very well could be. That guy is a double-double machine and a load down low. And it's crazy to think because Duke, when we were growing up, let's say high school and early part of college, it was all about their guard play. Everyone feared JJ Redick. Everyone, they hated him, but they kind of feared Greg Paulus. They feared a little bit of Grayson Allen, who was kind of that small forward position. But it was mostly the guards, and obviously going way back to Bobby Hurley, who's the all-time assist leader in college basketball. Yeah, I agree. But that is exactly the title that he holds. Past few years with Duke now, though, they've got guys like Marvin Bagley. They've got who did you just mention? Vernon Carey. Jason Tatum's a big guy in the college game. Their big men have been playing extraordinarily well. Brandon Ingram, who I'm missing. Like recently, Duke is a big man factory almost.
Yeah, I think that it's just kind of the nature of college basketball as a whole, in the sense that you've just got these much more of these bigger dudes that are just athletic and can be developed more. It's a lot easier 30, 40 years ago. It's a lot easier to develop a 6'2" dude in the gym, because not everybody was that height, but coaches, whatever, they knew how to teach players how to handle the ball. Now, when you have positionless basketball, let's call it, Marvin Bagley's of the world and Brandon Ingram's and all these guys are learning every single position. And really, I mean, you can say the same thing about Kentucky, all those schools where you used to just have, a dump it in type of center. Now you've got guys like Brandon Ingram, an all-star 7-footer playing the 3 in the NBA, and so I think it's just as much as it is about Duke. And shout out to, obviously we kind of hate the dude, but you respect him. It's just kind of like how I feel about, say, like Bill Belichick, for example, is Coach K. Coach K has adapted as well or better than any coach in college basketball. He was anti everything, and then he's now like the biggest one and done machine in college basketball, even maybe above John Calipari.
Which I respect, but at the same time, it was cringeworthy when he said it, when Cal was kind of at the forefront of those Memphis teams, early Kentucky teams with John Wall. It was cringeworthy when Coach K was like, we develop players, we want them to stay. Now it's like, dude, do you not remember what you said 7 years ago? You're right. You and Calipari are the same person. It's just that Calipari got a head start on you in 2007.
Right.
So I see what you're saying, but
yeah,
I don't want to give I don't want to give K too much credit, because he's been cringeworthy about this whole thing the past like 10 years.
What do you think is the most notable thing that happened in last year's Duke North Carolina games?
Oh, Zion.
Zion. Sure. Yeah, it's right. Yeah, I was just looking at that right now.
Well, even the conference tournament game, I think he dropped like 31.
Right, but that was at Cameron. And obviously, this is at the Dean Dome this time around, so not a perfect analogy there. But yeah, even I don't even know if you mentioned Zion Williamson a second ago in the big, but he's not even really like a. I mean, he is a big. He's a big.
Oh, big.
But,
yeah.
But he's not necessarily a big just because he's big. He might develop into into a 3 in the NBA potentially, and that's just kind of crazy. And again, goes to kind of what I was saying about how, 20, 30 years ago, Zion Williamson would have been Charles Barkley. Now he's gonna be expected to make like 2 or 3 threes a game in the NBA.
It's kind of funny though. You're right about Zion, but it's just funny to think even as recent as like 7, 8 years ago, 10, 12 years ago with Duke, go from Shavlik Randolph and the Brian Zubacks of the world, Marshall Plumlees of the world, to Ingram, Vernon Carey, Marvin Bagley. It's just
they got a hell of a lot more athletic in about a 4 to 7 year span there, and all of a sudden, because I don't think Duke was ever known for like throwing lobs to each other or anything like that. JJ Redick wasn't out there throwing lobs, or at least not as many as you would see now.
Yeah, I wonder what the fundamental difference between those 6 players that I had mentioned.
Couldn't put my finger on it. I don't know.
So, do you have a few moments that are, that jump out to you about this Carolina Duke rivalry over the years as we've grown up watching them? Just like 2 or 3 of them that you can think of?
It's kind of funny because I didn't like this guy in college. Don't really love him in the NBA, and the particular matchup that he's known for was one of the probably worst years for both of these teams combined, just in terms of the records when they met, but is the Austin Rivers shot. Because I never really liked Austin Rivers. I mean, he's fine in the NBA. He's a good role player in the NBA. I'd have to go back and look, but if I remember correctly, though, that year wasn't a down year like North Carolina down year this year, but it wasn't like a top. Was it a top? I don't think it was like a top 5 matchup when he hit that shot.
I don't know if it was top 5, but
Yeah.
they were fine. They were both good teams.
Right, but it wasn't like a top 5, like I just said, matchup. That one kind of stands out to me, probably more than anyone else, and that might be a little recency bias on my part. Is there one that kind of comes to mind for you as a most notable?
Yeah, there's a few. So we had mentioned Zion. The reason last year's game jumped off, I guess you could say recency bias, but Zion has been hugely lauded as like the most transcendent college basketball player in I don't know how long. So any game with Zion, especially the greatest rivalry in sports, it's not necessarily recency bias. It's the draw. And when I mentioned draw, the things I'll never forget is President Obama being there. I mean, you had A-list celebrities in the fucking in Cameron Indoor, right? Which is, I mean, it's a small gymnasium in Durham, North Carolina, and Zion Williamson brought that, and the hype around it. These were 2 top 5 teams. This is, like I said, Zion, but there's other talent on the floor. You got Trey Jones, and so it just sucked though. The first 20 minutes or the first 20 seconds, I think Zion blows his shoe out. And so the air just got sucked out of the arena. And I was happy that Carolina won, but I was not happy, obviously, that Zion couldn't play. So that's one of the first that jumps out to my mind in terms of the rivalry was Zion blowing a shoe out. And then, of course, the aftermath. I mean, the talking heads. Zion shouldn't play anymore. Zion should sit out until the NBA draft. Just all of the takes. And knowing what we know about Zion now, a year later, the kid just wants to play. I mean, I genuinely think he was not blowing smoke up our ass when he said he would have gone back to Duke unless he was forced out the door. So he loved it that much. So the Zion blowing out his shoe was a huge moment. Also, Obama like mouthing, oh, he ripped his shoe or something like that. That was hysterical. Austin Rivers, that's on my list as well. Cannot forget about this one, though. Gerald Henderson elbowing Tyler Hansbrough, and there was a fucking bloody mess. And it was just so – it encapsulated both Hansbrough so well and also Duke so well. Gerald Henderson, by all accounts, is not a dirty player. But Duke, they have guys like Christian Laettner who step on your chest. Gerald Henderson, who fucking knocks you on your ass with an elbow. And then it embodied Tyler Hansbrough. He's gushing blood. He gets up. He's just the epitome of this, like, tough white kid who, like, you know, he's just going to let me, you know, crack my nose back into place and I'll go hit this free throw. That was Tyler Hansbrough. And then lastly, this one I think goes under the radar, and I'll get some more of yours after this. But this game goes under the radar in my opinion. North Carolina in 2006 was ranked 13. Duke was ranked number 1. Duke hosted senior night this game. Again, in Cameron Indoor, they had JJ Redick and Sheldon Williams, who, by the way, did you know this? Sheldon Williams was a 2-time defensive player of the year.
Huh.
I didn't know he was that good in college. So they had those 2 guys at home on senior night. Teams don't lose on senior night. Carolina was the defending champion, but they lost pretty much their whole core. Like I said, they were ranked 13, and they had Hansbrough and Danny Green only as freshmen. Redick apparently missed 15 of his last 16 shots, which is kind of unfathomable. You could argue that's his worst game ever. But this game, Carolina ended up winning as the 13th ranked team over number 1 senior night on the road. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the Hansbrough, Danny Green legendary run that they really went on.
So I was wrong, by the way. It was that Austin Rivers was a number 9 versus number 5 matchup. So, yeah. Just like every.
I was wrong too. Then
I
that's
guess.
right.
Yeah, whatever. One of them that I remember, I actually had to go back and look at which year it was Chris Duhon hitting like a game winner or a game tying shot in during regular time, and then a game winner in overtime. That was back in 2004. I actually kind of liked Chris Duhon back at Duke. I can't name too many players that I enjoyed at Duke. really strange. That's one of the strange NBA careers of all time too. Is Chris Duhon's NBA career? Wasn't he like an all-star for the Bulls and then pretty much like was out of the league 18 months later?
I can't remember if he was
something
an all-star,
like that.
But he was good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really damn good, like 20 plus points a game, right? And then I don't specifically remember watching this game or all the plays from this game, but you see it on a lot of the highlights, and that's Jerry Stackhouse's like monster dunk back in the early 90s, right when we were or mid 90s when we were getting into college basketball. I know that I like watched that game as a 7-year-old, and but I don't specifically remember the outcome. It was a double overtime game, but I do remember Jerry Stackhouse's just monster dunk with authority. I'm sure on Saturday we'll see it replayed in the pregame montage that they'll do as well.
So many memories and so many montages that it seems as if every single year they're able to take something from the previous year and add it to that montage. And it's not these producers fishing for something. Like I said, the Zion shoe break, I will guarantee that is more automatic. A Zion shoe break in this year's montage, more automatic than a Luann Pipkins 97.3 whatever percent foul shooter from the line. That is more automatic than a Pipkins foul shot. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. But you think Duke's gonna win in a blowout?
Yeah, our boy, friend of the program, Cody Hoxie, will be happy to hear that. I think Duke probably wins. I mean, I'll say it with this caveat: if Cole Anthony doesn't score like 30 points, it's going to be a Duke cover / potential blowout, in my opinion.
Yeah, even with Cole Anthony, they still suck.
Yeah, I just don't, and it's not even necessarily any fault of their. It is fault of their own, but they've had a lot of injuries, and Cole Anthony not being there, and even now that he's back, it's only the second or third game back that they've had any opportunity to put anything together. It's just weird, and we've said this all year, but even when Cole Anthony was there at the beginning of the year, it's really weird to watch a North Carolina team that doesn't have any offense. Usually it's the other way around. Usually these games end up being like 95-88. I absolutely no way can see this game being anything other than like a 60s, 70s scoring at most game, at least for North Carolina. Duke could score more than that, but even Duke, I still don't. To me, I think they moved up to the Vegas national championship favorite this week. I believe, and I still don't love Trey Jones. I still don't think that he's the guy that leads you to a national championship, even in this year of super roller coaster college basketball. So I don't see this game being a super high scoring game like a lot of them have been previously.
Cole Anthony coming back, them being at home, Carolina, and the fact that it's a rivalry game. I know I just said Cole Anthony, even when he's back, Carolina sucked, but those last two items, at home rivalry game, that's the only thing that may keep this close in terms of the crowd's energy feeding them, but Duke's going to end up winning that game.
Well, let me pose one more question to you, sorry, before we move on. If Cole Anthony didn't play for North Carolina and didn't have 2 games with Duke left, do you think he would have come back and actually played this season?
I still don't think he should have come back.
No, I don't either.
I don't know why he's back.
No, I don't either. But I think the saving grace, if you're North Carolina, would be that if you're like Roy Williams or whoever, if you're convincing someone to come back, is like, hey, we got to beat Duke. If you're going to come to North Carolina, we got to beat Duke. I don't know. I'm just saying that if it was a different situation, if Cole Anthony played for Oregon, would he come back? Hell, we got to beat Oregon State and Trey Tinkle twice this year. Like, no, who gives a shit?
I see what you're saying, but I also feel like this generation of kids, and this isn't me like a get off my lawn type response here. I feel like they don't care that much either.
Because they're only there for a year, and that's actually something
they shouldn't care though. Why? Right. I like I said, I wouldn't have blamed Zion for not playing last year. His second game back was against Carolina in the ACC tournament,
right.
But I wouldn't blame Cole for not playing. I still don't know why he's back. The season's completely lost, but I mean, to each their own. I also don't blame him for playing against Duke, but the level of magnitude that this and weight that this rivalry holds, you could be right, but I just feel like kids, maybe Cole just wants to play. I don't know. We might be over.
That's probably it more than anything else, but yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and get to our interview with Mike Burgomaster. All right. We want to thank Burgo. Always a great time chatting with him. Friend of the program. Wishing him best of luck moving forward. Let's finish it off here, Taylor, with some segments. Where am I? Brian Zubek.
Oh, wow. Second reference.
Yeah, I laid a little bit of an Easter egg there for the theater goers. Brian Zubek, if you remember him, he's a national title winner. He was on that 2010 Duke team that beat Butler, the Gordon Hayward shot. And so Brian Zubek graduated from Duke with a degree in U.S. history, but went a completely different direction after college. He opened his own pastry shop in his hometown of Haddonfield, New Jersey, and the pastry shop was called Dream Puffs with a Z at the end. So while he was doing that, he was also investing in real estate and flipping houses on the side. So Zubek preferred that line of work as opposed to being a baker. So he took a job at Cushman & Wakefield in Manhattan, went to school at night at NYU. Sounds very, very Duke-like. And then he wound up getting a master's in real estate finance and investment, graduated from NYU in 2015. Zubek came back to Philadelphia and started his own company. He's now the owner of Catalyst City Development, where he builds multifamily apartment buildings and single-family townhomes. All the real estate stuff is fantastic. Hug for Zubek in terms of pursuing his degree and his passion and all of that good shit. I'm sure he's very well off. The fact that I'm now picturing a 7'1" monster making pastries, it will never escape me, especially Brian Zubek.
You know, you feel like pastries are kind of not specific, but if like you're doing some frosting or something on some pastries, to have mitts that big and try and be that precise, you gotta have some other assistants helping you out there, because that's a big ask for a guy to do a design on like a cupcake at 7'1". I mean, you're 4 feet above the cupcake, trying to use your huge hands to make little intricate designs. That's got to be tough.
The dexterity from Brian Zubek, and he wasn't even like skilled. He was, okay, we need to round out our starting five, and you are able to give us 5 fouls.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he did play. Was it the national championship game? The Final Four. He actually had a pretty good game. Like
I don't remember
point wise. Yeah, I'd have to look that up. But yeah, wow, what a name! Great name. I love. It's interesting. It's crazy how all these people who don't know what they're going to do after college become realtors. I wonder, or on the flip side, don't do anything with their degree that they got in college. Does that sound like any combination of people that you know, like at all? I don't know. Again, I can't really put my finger on it either. Can't think about it.
Me neither. As an English major who currently works in the finance world, I couldn't tell you what you're talking about.
Absolutely no idea.
So Brian Zubek doing very well. Good for him. Let's get on to hugs, though, Taylor. Who's your hug for?
So my hug is for the KU and K-State bowling teams. They recreated a picture at their last bowling match of the K-State KU basketball brouhaha that was had there, including one of the, I can't tell if it's a coach or who it is, but he picked up a stool as well. So I'm going to big hug for these athletes on the Kansas State and K-State bowling teams. I actually put more effort into trying to find who won that matchup than I did anything else this week. And let me tell you how hard it is to find college bowling results. Pretty tough. Quiz time for you. Do you know the top bowling college in the state of Kansas, though?
Let me think here. Hang on.
I mean, you're really going to have to go deep on this.
Is it Topeka?
No, it's actually Kansas Wesleyan University. That's the number one bowling college or the highest ranked bowling college in Kansas. They're in Salina, Kansas. Also, second fun fact before we get to your hug, do you know that they have RPI for bowling as well, which is, I guess, would be a similar metric as like RPI used in basketball? I'm not sure like how you would apply it similarly, because it's not like, games played against the zone, or do they have maybe someone is Ken Palm sports equivalent out there, like checking out the oil patterns in the lanes. That's bowling knowledge right there. In the lanes to see how they performed against each, oil pattern. I don't know. I'd have to dive further into it, but overall, big hug for the recreation of the picture of the two teams fighting. It's pretty funny.
Two things there. One, bowling serious shit. The second I saw Pete Weber and that reaction, I realized that this isn't just something that we can make fun of or something that we watch on the Ocho or something that we watch when there's absolutely no sports on ESPN2 and that they're airing it. This stuff is serious. And the reactions and the power index or whatever it was that you were referencing.
RPI. Yes.
RPI. Yeah, that stuff's serious. All right. So it doesn't surprise me one bit. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm glad that both of these teams could make light of that scenario because no one really got hurt. It was serious in the in the moment, maybe a day after. But all these pundits like Dick Vitale and Dan Dockich, they're all having a cow over a Kansas State-Kansas brawl, and it was a brawl. But I'm glad that both teams are kind of able to say, you know what, who gives a shit? We're okay. We've moved past it.
So speaking of Pete Weber, I really wish that Pete Weber was the Bachelor and not our current Pete Weber that we have as the Bachelor, because at least that Pete Weber was fired up and did literally anything other than just stare off into space and make no decisions at all. Pete Weber would have gone into the bowler, would have gone into that house, said, "You're coming with me. You're coming with me. You like that? I'm a man. I'm 40, whatever." This current Pete Weber that we have sucks.
Let me get down a rabbit hole. Or you know what? I'm going to spin a spider's web.
Okay.
Who's the head coach of Kansas State basketball?
Bruce? Who's the head coach?
Bruce Weber.
Bruce Weber.
Don't overthink this.
Okay.
Weber.
Wow.
3
wow.
Webers spinning a web. Where the hell am I?
Unbelievable. Was that your English degree or your experience in financial planning?
My ridiculous mind. That's like my John Nash beautiful mind, except for stupid college athletics shit. So I'll move on. My hug is for Candace Lee. So Candace Lee is the new athletic director at Vanderbilt University. The former AD is Malcolm Turner, and he resigned, opening the door for Lee to take over as Vandy's new AD. Why is this so important, and why is this hug worthy, you may ask? Well, Lee, who is a former women's basketball captain at Vanderbilt, she becomes the school's first female athletic director and the first Black woman to lead an SEC athletic department. So I would say, first and foremost, hug to Miss Lee. But second of all, fix that fucking court, because it's an absolute travesty. Your court sucks. I don't care about Jerry Stackhouse struggling in his first year. I don't care that you decided to, or not you, but Malcolm Turner and the previous AD regime decided to bring back Derek Mason, who's terrible as Vanderbilt's head football coach, and kept boasting that he's the man for the job. I don't care that you guys have to worry about those two those two coaches, I should say. Fix the court. That's all I got to ask out of you, Candace Lee. And if you do that, you'll probably go down as Vanderbilt's best AD in history.
100%. Can I tell you, or can you guess what Vanderbilt's last national championship was in?
Oh, it's got to be baseball, right?
Women's bowling.
How recent was that?
I don't know. I'm just reading it on
that
the
had to have been
the
within
article.
the last few years. Didn't they win baseball with like Kumar Rocker, my Indian brethren?
I think they won I think they got to the championship there, but did they lose to Coastal Carolina? Is that the same year that Arizona lost to Coastal Carolina I don't know. I'm just saying bowling powerhouse just to have more, come full circle, kind of like a bowling ball, I guess.
Well, you know what? Good for Vanderbilt leading the charge on ethnic, people in powers of leadership. Good.
Just fix like you said, though. Just fix the court, and literally, that's all you could do. You could be there for a year, fix the court, and then leave, and you would still be, like you said, the best athletic director in Vanderbilt history.
That's all we need to do. All right. Well, as we had mentioned, enjoy these games. Ton of games this upcoming weekend. We are off until next week. We'll see you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.